joined by Eduardo Quaid, journalist in Paris here now. Eduardo, what do we know about this attack in Nice?
Well, we do know that 3 people are dead. That has been confirmed. Also confirmed is that a woman among those 3 was beheaded. You mentioned the possibility of a second beheading. We don't have confirmation of that. This comes, of course, at a terrible moment in France. Tensions are very, very high here. It comes just hours after President Macron announced a major new confinement beginning at midnight tonight. So the country is going through a very difficult period. People are quite upset and depressed, as is normal.
Now, you mentioned the pending lockdown around the coronavirus, albeit here, but Macron has seemingly every day announced a new series of measures tackling certain Islamist institutions, closing down mosques. Has the anger been palpable in France as much as we've seen around the greater Muslim world?
I don't think it's much anger in France as it is just a feeling of that the country is going through a very difficult moment. People are really quite depressed. I expect there was, after the attack, there was an emergency meeting at the Interior Ministry this morning. We expect that some more security measures will be announced, especially protecting churches and other religious institutions. You may recall that a couple of years ago, an old priest was beheaded, was killed while saying mass. It seems now as though we've entered a period where a number of radical Muslims who are absolutely livid about the publishing of these cartoons have decided to take things into their own hands. They seem to be acting alone. And also we seem now to have a new tactic, which is not just killing, it's beheading, which is, of course, an extremely violent act that takes tremendous amount of force. Today, we have the development that the person who is allegedly responsible for these killings has not been identified, but has been arrested. That is also new in the past, including last week with the beheading of the school teacher Samuel Paty. Police have killed the assailants. They also killed the assailants in the murder of the priest that I mentioned. But today, the alleged assailant was arrested and taken to a hospital because he apparently suffered injuries from the police during the arrest.
Certainly significant details here. Thank you for that so far. Eduardo, stay with us, though, please, as we're bringing our Middle East correspondent, Adi Kopowitz, into the conversation here as well. Adi, it's, I believe, important to highlight the backdrop of where this issue happens. Macron's moves in France have been met with serious reactions across really the Middle East, but the wider Muslim world. How do you characterize that in light of what we're seeing now today?
Yes, David, during the last week, Macron has become one of the most hated people in the Muslim world, with protests all across Arab and Muslim countries. We've seen his photo being stepped on and put as a carpet in many different Arab countries, and calls for boycotting French goods. We've heard in many different countries. We heard that from Turkey, which is obviously the first country, the main country leading this hardline against Macron and his attitude towards radical Islam. But we've also seen calls for boycott in more moderate Muslim countries like Egypt, where French goods have been taken off the shelves. And of course, in more Islamic countries like Saudi Arabia, where also a lot of people in the social networks called to boycott French goods. So really, this is a rise of tensions between specifically Macron and the Muslim world following the things he said after the decapitating of the teacher last week. And this is a new record of these tensions, a surprising attack in France. However, there is a background of this rising tensions between Macron and the Muslim world.
And we've seen the street protests, the burning, many of the images playing over us here as we're talking here about, as you mentioned, some of the demonstrations, the people burning flags and effigies, stepping on the face of Macron, major insult in the Middle East. But have there been calls for violence, and how top-down have some of these pushback been? Of course, Erdogan has been so public from Turkey in his resistance to the French president's moves. Have other governments been taking actions as well?
Well, we didn't hear other governments other than Erdogan saying that actions should be taken against Macron. We didn't hear significant leaders in the Middle East calling for violence. We did hear Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan saying that Macron needs to go through mental inspection because of the way he treats Islam, and also some radical voices coming from Iran, but that's of no surprise, and that is considered to be less effective on the Muslim community in France, which is mainly Sunni Muslims, and doesn't listen so much to the supreme leader of Iran, a Shia Muslim country. However, the tension is very widespread, and the masses of Muslims all around the world, even without a call from Muslim leaders, are already having a very hard line against Macron and against the line that he's taken against radical Islam, an issue that is very sensitive in France, and Macron is really trying to take this some sort of a harder line against radical Islam that is growing in France, especially when his political opponent from the right, Marine Le Pen, has a much harsher line against radical Islam, and Macron in a way can't afford himself politically to take a too soft of a line against this phenomenon.
Eduardo in Paris, coming back to you here, Eduardo Quay, in light of the situation Adie's highlighting around the greater Muslim world, Arab countries around the Middle East, is there, and now looking at this attack today, is the anger palpable in France here, seeing this international reaction to their efforts to crack down, and now another attack? What sort of atmosphere now are we likely to see come out of this in France?
Well, you may be beginning to see some questioning about these cartoons. Remember, Macron did say that the cartoons that originally published several years ago, first by a Danish newspaper and then by Charlie Hebdo, republished at the beginning of the trial that is going on here in Paris, another source of tension, a trial of the accomplices of the Charlie Hebdo attack in January 2015. That trial has led to increased tension in Paris. Since the killing of Samuel Paty last week, many demonstrations have taken place in support of the slain teacher, and many people have actually shown those cartoons. They've demonstrated with those cartoons. So the French seem to be absolutely determined to prove the point that they will not, that freedom of speech will not be limited by these acts. However, the question is increasingly being asked over the last few days, even before this morning's attack, is it not time now to try to cool things down, try to bring the tension down? So we will see what happens, what the reaction is in the next couple of hours. It's a little bit too soon to tell. People are only now actually finding out about this morning's attack, mainly by through word of mouth. Most people were on their way to work or at work when it happened. As far as anti-French protests are concerned, the French are don't seem very concerned about it. There have been jokes that a very famous brand of French cheese that is popular in the Middle East, that they're boycotting it, and that was taken here with a certain amount of humor. Much more serious is the situation with Turkey, as we spoke last week as well, and with Erdogan saying Macron needed to have his head examined. The tensions between France and Turkey are at an all-time high. As you know, the French recalled the French ambassador to Ankara last week, and tensions have been building on many issues between the two countries. Charlie Hebdo published a nasty cartoon of Erdogan today. Erdogan made some nasty comments about Charlie Hebdo. So,
Eduardo, thank you for the updates here from Paris. We're approaching the end of our broadcast here now around this breaking news. Thank you for the updates.